Hospital workers, serious. What regrets do you hear from dying patients? He wished he had been a better father to his daughter. He wished they had reconnected. His dementia prevented him from remembering they had reconnected years before and that she visited often. I wish I could have made him aware that he had accomplished his last wish, but he died not really understanding that. Holy, this is the saddest post in the entire thread. Shucks, all this it is sad. I'm outta here. I worked as an oncology nurse right out of nursing school. I was barely 21 years old. Had a patient about my age who was dying of lung cancer. A few hours before he died, I sat with him and he was telling me how much he wished that he would have had more time to maybe fall in love, marry, have kids. He was so young. He asked me to call his parents and he died shortly after they arrived. It was awful. His regrets were more about the life not lived. Many older patients had some interesting life stories and most wanted to tell them before they died. Most were at peace with the life they lived. Many regretted working so much and not spending enough time with family. Sometimes I feel my bones straining under the weight of all the lives I'm not living. Jonathan Safran Foer, extremely loud and incredibly close. In the ER, it's not something most people see coming when they arrive, but it's usually the same regret when they are coherent. They all wish their family was there, which sucks even more lately with Ovid since family can't come in initially, or they cry out for their so in a panic. It's gotten to the point recently where we tell them so is right here with you. The look of relief on people's faces just hearing that gets me every time. People just want to not be alone at the end. In a confession subreddit, a dude confessed how he was with a man. During his last moments, he crashed his truck in the roadside. Op was behind him, called the urgencies. As Op was waiting the ambulance, even hearing it, the man asked after his wife, where she was, that he wanted to see her. Op tried to comfort it the best he could, saying she was on her way. The man died when the ambulance arrived. Sometimes after, Op looked after this man on social networks. He found out that this man's wife was already passed, and that he said to the man that his late wife was on her way. I was a new nurse, flying solo. We got a call for an incoming trauma, woman in her 50s involved in a multi-car accident. We were already at the ambulance bay, unsure of the woman's complete condition. She rolled and breathing on her own, but very labored with asymmetrical chest expansion. She was profusely bleeding, had multiple deep lacerations, pupils blown, debris covering most of her, etc. Her vitals were unstable. She was circling the drain. We knew she was on the verge of coding. I was standing near her head, ready to assist in supporting her airway, but also providing comfort and doing my best to calm her. The woman looked me directly in the eyes and in a hoarse, labored voice stated, I was angry. I told her I was disappointed in her. She began to cry. Her vitals plummeted. I'm sorry, was the last thing she said before her heart stopped. We coded her, intubated her, performed round after round of ACLS, only to eventually have to call time of death. I still see her face at times, her eyes filled with more emotional pain than physical. It took much longer and was so much harder to write this than I thought it would be. Oh man, that was my biggest fear as a kid, and still pretty big now. My mom and I had a thing that no matter how angry we were, or how busy, we would tell each other I love you before splitting up, whether it was a short car ride, a phone call, or a cross-country trip, just in case. I was a hospice nurse. One of my elderly patients had skin cancer, a huge malignant melanoma on the side of his neck that was growing rapidly. He had been a farmer all his life and never married. One night we were talking and I asked him if there was anything he wished he had done differently in his life, and he thought about it a minute and said he wished he had worn a hat when he was farming. I wish he did too. I love his answer. I hope he's farming in a better place now, with a hat on. I hope he's wearing a really big fancy sombrero while he's farming up in the skies above and beyond. I work in a hospital. Whenever someone is at the end of their life, they always just want to be with their loved ones. Any regrets I've heard is always family related. They wanted more time with the people they love. Most people are at peace with things though. People also tend to wish they took their health seriously. End-of-life physician here. CPR. No, seriously, hear me out. Imagine using your hands to crush the sternum down 2 inches repeatedly of your 90-year-old grandmother who weighs 90 pounds, so that maybe you can then put her on a ventilator from which she might never get off alive. We ask this of everyone who comes into the hospital, but too often it's asked more like, hey, if you're drowning, do you want us to save you? Rather than what it truly is, especially for those who most likely won't survive it in the first place. and if they do will be significantly worse off than they were before they died. The survival statistics for patients with 1-2 significant comorbidities with an in-hospital cardiac arrest is like 5% to leave alive, and then 30-day survival is 5% of that original 5%, if I remember correctly. I cannot count the number of times families were adamant on having it done to their loved one only to then see what it entails firsthand and beg us not to do it again. My husband, 33, suffered cardiac arrest last year in December. We were alone in a strange city, looking for a place to eat. Luckily, the car was barely moving at the time, because he was driving. I did chest compressions until rescue arrived, about 5 minutes. What I learned in the ER that night is that outcomes for cardiac arrest are typically terrible if the patient doesn't regain consciousness right away. They immediately prepared me for likely brain damage. Somehow, he woke up with his brain perfect as they were preparing to ice him down. About 3 hours after his collapse, I learned during his hospital stay that chest compressions outside of a hospital almost never have a good outcome. His heart was completely done and he had to get a transplant. But we got so lucky with his CPR. I'm glad I didn't know what might have happened, because I don't know I would have been able to keep going. I had to do CPR on my dad when he had an out-of-hospital cardiac arrest. Turns out he suffered a widowmaker arrest, 100% blockage of the left anterior descending artery in the heart. Somehow he survived and after one shock woke up. Now almost been a year and he's absolutely fine with a few more stents. We're very, very lucky. I did training to be a CNA and we had to work in a nursing home as part of our training. I didn't really get into any deep conversations with the patients there, but I can say this. If you have family in a nursing home, please visit with them. It's a sad and lonely place to be. It really is. I'm doing my nursing school clinical in one right now and it's freaking sad. On my shift yesterday, people asked me to translate for one resident who was agitated and crying in Portuguese. No one could understand her. I went to her room and asked her what she needs. She said she wants to go to bed and sleep. She's alone. Doesn't have her husband, and her kids forgot about her. It's just sad. I'm all alone, she said with tears in her eyes. Please visit your family if they're in a nursing home. Edit. This comment blew up overnight and I have really enjoyed reading everybody's responses. Thank you for sharing your personal experiences here, stranger friends. There are several comments that mention the trauma bad or abusive parenting can cause, and how that would affect whether someone gets visitors or not. I just want to acknowledge you all and tell you no one is judging you, and my message was not for you folks. We all need to find our own peace in life, and that means cutting off abusers. My message was intended for those of us who intend to visit or call mom and dad, but life seems to always get in the way. Those of us who may not realize just how lonely life in those facilities is. I worked with one woman very advanced in dementia. I'll never forget when she had a moment of clarity, grabbed my arm, stared right into my eyes, and begged me to kill her. Paramedic, but close enough, made a run on a woman in her 30s for shortness of breath. Her and her boyfriend had just moved into an apartment together. They were fighting over something trivial, which room to unpack first or something. He thought she was just being dramatic. We transported. She never made it. Went from awake and talking to unresponsive and asystolic, no cardiac activity, in a matter of seconds. They were so caught up in the little argument that they never said goodbye. They never told each other they loved them. She didn't have any last words, and honestly that's even worse. Back when I was a teenager, my brother and I were real close. We would watch scary things together. Ghost Adventures, Haunted, a bunch of other cheesy things. He loves running into my bedroom and asking if I wanted to play COD Zombies, which he totally sucked at. Was a horrible listener. He would have given anything to make everyone happy, when he could. He almost drowned trying to fish out our brother's fishing rod. We convinced him to dress as a woman and flaunt himself on the highway. He loved to make weird-ass popcorn seasoned with sugar and cinnamon. He loved rescuing spiders. He gave a homeless guy that had his granddaughter his food, because they looked hungry. He was a good kid. Every day, I wake up and think about how kind he was. The last thing I told him was he was a piece of it. It has been almost 10 years, and I will never forgive myself. Please find it within your soul to forgive yourself. Your brother has forgiven you. I'm sure of it. Please don't let those words continue to haunt you. You can do this. I know it's difficult, but your brother would want you to hold on to the good times and let go of the shame and self-hatred. I've worked in long-term care for over a decade. I can't speak for the young, but most often old people regret the things they didn't do. It's been a long time since I worked in the industry, but I think about this a lot. It's very likely that no one ever said, "I wish I worked more. I wish I didn't spend as much time with my family. I wish I didn't have so many friends." What others can you think of? I remember this 40-year-old patient that I had was dying from breast cancer that spread throughout her body. She was diagnosed with breast cancer 10 years earlier and had a mastectomy. The doctor recommended for her to have a bilateral mastectomy with reconstruction due to high risk of recurrence of cancer. She said that she wanted to keep her breast, a real breast rather than an implant, in case she remarries and will be somewhat whole. She regretted not getting the bilateral mastectomy. If she did, she would not gotten cancer in her remaining breast and dying at such a young age. The patient never ended up marrying after all. A week later, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I instantly told the doctor that I wanted a bilateral mastectomy with reconstruction. I also had an aggressive form of cancer. My doctor kept pushing a lumpectomy, which I probably would have gotten before I have heard how much she regretted her decision. I feel that she actually saved my life sharing and opening up with her regret of all time. Thanks for sharing this. Just yesterday I found out I have the BRCA1 breast cancer gene, which comes with circa 86% chance of getting breast cancer before I turn 80. I still need to meet with a genetic counselor, but I know a double mastectomy is a common preventative measure, and I hate the thought of it. My mom had it done after actually getting cancer. She's still in remission, thankfully. Anyways, your post is helping me be more open to the idea. AEMT here. Most patients that I see in my ambulance are too sick to talk in these cases, but one sticks with me. Mid-40s male called us for chest pain, put a 12 lead on, and he was in the middle of a massive heart attack. For those that know the term, he was throwing tombstones. Sad part was he had medical training, so he knew that it wasn't good. We were screaming to the hospital. He looked me dead in the eye and goes, "I should have ate that F cake." When I asked what he meant, he told me, "F what others think, if it makes you happy, do it. Eat the cake, pet a squirrel, take a nap. F anyone else, it doesn't matter." He crashed shortly after we got to her, didn't come back. Now at least if I want to do something purely for the fun of it and my wife asks why I want to, all I have to say is I want to pet the squirrel. I can relate to this story. I'm a paramedic from Australia. Once, early in my career, I was treating a cardiologist in his 50s from a major trauma center that was experiencing severe chest pain. Cool, pale, clammy. He looked like completed. 12 lead showed a large street depression with a slope in V1, V3. I knew that it was severe, and that the patient was showing the winner's T waves. For those that don't know, this specific rhythm is an indication of a huge occlusion of the lead artery in the heart. The cardiologist saw the look on my face and asked to see what he had. He knew almost instantly what it was, asked me if I knew what it was, which I confirmed that I did. He and I both knew that his situation was dire, and that I'd already given all of the medications and interventions that were within my scope of practice. He arrested en route to hospital, and verification of death was completed after 40 minutes of CPR. I'll never forget how educated he was on his own condition. He almost seemed reserved to his fate. My mom did home health and hospice. My stepdad was very abusive, and my mom would take me to work with her to try and protect me. She didn't want to leave him due to religious beliefs. That's a different story. There was an old man. I'd play cards with him. We'd talk about working on the farm we had. He was a nice guy. He figured out I was being physically abused. His health started declining and he couldn't play cards or get out of bed. The last time I saw him, he said he was sorry he wasn't younger and that he couldn't help me. Almost 25 years ago, and I still remember him. Dang. This one hit me in the heart. I wish I could let him know that we did leave my dad and I grew up to have a good life. I don't remember a lot of my childhood, but I can remember the few bright spots of kindness and compassion some people showed me. A little different, but I worked in a G lab and we had a much older man, late 70s, probably maybe late 80s. It's been a while, coming for G issues. While doing the procedure we found cancer and it was a death sentence. Super bad, and I think he had refused to have a colonoscopy up until this point. The doc said it was horrific, we couldn't get past the cancer, it was so bad. He said maybe a few months. We finish up and I am at bedside with a patient and doc comes in to talk and family wouldn't believe it. The guy wouldn't believe it. The doc backed down and not once told him how bad it actually was. I was pretty upset because doc basically lied to the family and gave them false hope because they wouldn't stop arguing and he just didn't care to tell them the truth. I still wonder often about what happened to him. If he spent his last days fighting it and wearing himself out, or if let himself enjoy his last few months. Colon cancer is horrific. It looks exactly like the word cancer. It's disgusting. It looks alien. Please people, get your colonoscopy when you are told. It's not just you are saving, it's your kids who will get screening earlier if they find something in you. But if you don't, they'll never know they are at risk. I used to be a nursing student. I decided to drop out in my second year because it wasn't where my heart was. During my placement at the city hospital, I got to talking to an older man. He must have been like 88 then. 2010. He was talking about how I look exotic and always complimented my long hair, etc., etc. I was never threatened or put off by it. One day he told me I looked like the woman he wished he never let go, that he was completely happy about how his life turned out, loved his family and late wife, but he always thinks about the woman he shouldn't have let go by. Years later, I met a guy at work who ended up moving across the country for work. I remembered this old man and followed my heart. I never let my love get away. I married him this summer. You should always at least try. Even if it doesn't work out, go for it and find out so you never wonder. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please smash the like button and leave a comment which story you liked the most. Subscribe and hit the bell notification for updates on our latest videos. And don't forget to check the links in the description box for more awesome content.